Welcome everybody to the Social Dig, the greatest underrated show in the World Wide Web. I am your host, Mr. Rob G, and as always, we're going to be digging into the topics that keep you talking and the talk that keeps you thinking. So come on in, kick your feet up, get an ice cold beverage, and let's get ready to join the conversation. Lots been going on lately. We have Klippenstein, Ken Klippenstein, right? So he's in the news. He's getting his 15 minutes of fame right now, talking about David Grusch and the mental issues that apparently he says that he has. Things that you have to question the motive on a lot of the things that he's saying. So we're gonna dive into that, and then it's a mentality themed show. So we're gonna also jump into the mentality of disclosure. Like, what's the mental state for disclosure? Are we ready for confirmation? Those out there who may not understand that this is going on, are they ready for disclosure? We're gonna just cover some of the key points of some of the aspects that we should be looking at and things that we may be able to use to help out those people that may not be ready for disclosure, or confirmation, as my guy David Scott would say. So let's go ahead and take a look. I know I saw Maggie M10 was in the building, so definitely want to say what's up to Maggie. Brown Dorf is in the building. Bryson's Folly is in the building. Derek Galloway is in the building. And we're going to be welcoming a lot more people here as we go on with the show. So we kind of want to just take our time right now. This is one of those topics that I think is really key to the path that we need to take as humanity to get where we're going. You know what I mean? So this is definitely something that I would love to have input from the audience, because it isn't just what I think about this or what my perspective is. It's a collective, and it's about how can we all together sit back and figure out or put the blueprint together for humanity to take these next steps, these very important steps that we're gonna need to get to where we're going. So definitely happy to be doing this show. I couldn't wait for this, and it's definitely, like I said, it's an important conversation. We're gonna be jumping into that. So let's see here. This is Friday Night Live, as you can see up here. So it's TGIF for most people, except for our viewers down under like Maggie M10, where it is Saturday afternoon. So happy Saturday afternoon. And if you're watching this on Team Replay, go ahead and leave a comment, hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, definitely subscribe, because we get deep and we do this often. So without further delay, we're going to jump into some of this stuff here. Something like our disclosure news, where we're going to talk about Ken Klippenstein and this ridiculous article that he wrote here. So let's jump into that. All right, disclosure news, and as always, if you've been here for a while, you know about Ask the Chat. Ask the Chat, we're going to post a response to the question that we'll have during the show here. We'll have a couple. You can post it in the live chat, or you can call the message line. You can leave a message, or if we have enough people calling, we'll open up the live call-in line, and that number, once again, if you don't have it, is 856-843-3444, or that's 856-THE-DIG. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump into this here. We're going to kind of do a little review here, because our guy David Grusch is being slandered lately by a reporter by the name of Ken Klippenstein, who has a past that or connections, I should say, to the government, and he writes a piece where he pretty much digs up dirt on David Grusch's personal life stuff, right? I mean, we all have stuff in our personal life that we may not be proud of. But with that being said, I don't think that David Grush should necessarily be ashamed of what he had gone through. It's a lot of people, our service members, our veterans. We know that they have, some of them have suffered PTSD. They see some of the worst things while being deployed. They have to take part in a lot of the worst things you could even imagine while we live our protected lives in our societal bubble. They're out there, seeing some real things. And to kind of do that and point something out like that, I think is just very bad taste. And we're gonna go ahead and review a Twitter space conversation that Ken Klippenstein had with John Greenwald of the Black Vault. So, let's just preface this, right? Let's just go back and let's talk about it. So, we get reports that Ken Klippenstein, and we talked about this last show, Ken Klippenstein goes ahead and writes up an article on David Grush, trying to, I guess, what he feels like is expose David Grush or take away his credibility by pointing out some things in his past. Okay, so we understand that David Grush had PTSD, obviously. And then to go further with that, there were a couple claims from, I guess, a past wife and current wife that he had trouble with alcoholism. And I guess that's all perception, truthfully, because as someone pointed out, as far as that goes, he could have just, indulged in alcohol more than maybe she liked. And she considered that herself, and with her perception, to be alcoholism. So a lot of things that you could take with a grain of salt there. But the last incident happened back in 2018. So we're in 2023. So we're talking about half a decade ago. So why would someone go ahead and dig up information like that, right? Ross Coulthard reported on the News Nation broadcast originally that this information most likely was leaked through someone in the government, someone in the DOD. So Ken Klippenstein responded by saying that he actually FOIA'd this information, and this was all public information, he claims, that he received from a sheriff's department. So the next question ends up being, which they asked him, which was, who pointed you in that direction, right? Who's really looking for that information? How did you know where to go to find that information? And that was one of the big points that was talked about. And taking a look here, I know you guys are familiar with this right now. Hey, Magneticus, thanks for coming through. Maggie says, bait and switch, right? Okay, well, that's what I'm saying. So, yeah, this guy, and apparently his past reporting, some people say that he had done some respectable work, but then you all of a sudden turn your direction to David Grush, and he points out, and we'll hear in this conversation. This is the full Twitter space conversation. If you have not heard it, it's going to be shocking, some of the things that you hear this guy say. This guy is going to admit to some things, and you'll be able to determine by the end of that conversation what his motivations really were. So I want to make sure that this goes on record, and we're going to go ahead and definitely cover that. And Maggie says, stop focusing on the truth of his words and focus on his flaws, gross tactics. Definitely. But and there's some connections too. This guy just isn't a reporter. He has some connections to the government, and he fully admits, which I kind of thought was cool, that he at least admitted that his contacts were coming from people within the DOD. So obviously, we had David Grush sit there at the UFO hearing and pretty much state that there was reprisals, that people within the government didn't like what he was doing, and they were going after him in different ways. So we talked about a couple of shows back, the hit piece that Art Levine wrote, just pretty much slandering everyone within ufology who currently had a role in bringing this news out. We're talking about Ross Coulthard's, Jeremy Corbell's, George Knapp's, the list in one article. This guy called out, I want to say at least eight different people in one article, bringing up their dirt and reasons why they shouldn't be respected and kind of trying to wreck their credibility. So you have the same thing going on here with this guy, but we knew that the fight to discredit him was going to be fought soon. If you remember, Lou Elizondo faced a lot of the same stuff when he came out, right? A lot of discrediting, a lot of trying to take the shine away from Lou Elizondo. Like, you shouldn't believe him. He lied about ATIP, whatever the fact. But Lou Elizondo and David Grush, these guys are gonna go down in the history books as the guys that pretty much opened the floodgates on this issue. So with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and we're going to jump into Ken Klippenstein on the Twitter space. Just hopped in. So apparently, let me set the stage. John Greenwald was holding a Twitter space where my buddy Lou Jimenez and a bunch of other people were in there having a conversation about Ken Klippenstein. Apparently, word got to him, and then he hopped in himself and joined the Twitter space and then had a lot to say. Listen how he talks. The guy is, I get a slimy sort of feeling when I hear this guy talk. So before we jump in that, Maggie said that obviously works on people, otherwise they wouldn't do it. I'll say, show me a perfect human that did every single thing right. And that's one of the points we're going to make when it comes down to mental health and looking at mentality. No one is completely mentally stable if you really want to talk about it. How many of us really go get checked for that, right? Everybody will, and we'll get to that. So let's go ahead and let's check out Ken Klippenstein and what he had to say in his defense on Twitter Space. Let's go ahead and check this out.
I want to bring somebody on who popped into the space, Ken Klippenstein himself. Ken, feel free to unmute yourself. How you doing, Ken?
Hey, what's up, folks? I'm doing pretty well.
Hey,
How are you
good.
doing?
I'm kind of new to spaces, so I have no idea how long you were there. I just saw you pop up kind of as we were talking there, and I thought,
Oh, someone just sent it to me. Yeah, no, let me just say, I'm a big fan of your FOIA work. You were one of when I first got into FOIA years ago, you were one of like 3 or 4 people that I learned a lot from just by like looking at the stuff that you pulled together. So,
if you don't mind, then if I can just ask you a couple of questions, because there's a lot of, again, accusations. I mean, I dealt with a couple of them in threads today on my own that were kind of away from the brunt of the article, but just how people kind of concoct these, what I call and refer to, conspiracy theories about what you're doing and what your intent was.
right.
One of which that really kind of caught traction was how quick you got a response. Obviously, I think people just don't understand the differences between state.
Yeah, local FOIA. People try to do federal FOIA from the agencies they're familiar with, like FBI and CIA and stuff. Those are like backlogged to all hell, and you're waiting months and months or maybe
Years,
even
yeah.
years. But at the state and local level, these guys often are producing things for like people's defense attorneys, things, and it's staffed differently, and they're not inundated in requests, so the backlog is much less, especially for I've had some experience with these types of requests for local law enforcement, and if you do them narrow enough, it's really not it's generally not a very long wait time for them to fulfill.
I was surprised when I looked up, because I kind of wanted to put my money where my mouth was and back it up, because I was saying state was so much quicker, but I thought, hey, let's look it up. 5 days or less for the state of Virginia.
Totally. Oh yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, Ken, if you don't mind. I mean, a lot of people that have been supporting Grush and so on are calling this a hit piece. I want you to, not to be blunt with my question, but if I could just ask you to address that. What was your intention with this article?
Well, to be candid with you, I never believed the UFO stuff. Just to be frank, it's kind of like, okay, I mean, I'm a national security reporter, so I know people that do the UAP stuff, and there's UAP retrieval, and there's UAP retrieval. There are SAPs, and there are SAPs for retrieving stuff that they don't know. But then to jump from that and to say that this thing that we recovered that we don't know what it is, to jump and say, oh, it must be extraterrestrials, that's what I don't think is sustained by the facts. everything up to that point, which the whistleblowers have disclosed. And I would get, I mean, you know, whistleblower reprisal is a common thing. I take Grush at his word when he says that he was retaliated against. And his lawyer is a very, you know, honorable. I know the national security space fairly well. He's an honest person, so I believe both him and his attorney when they say he was retaliated against. It's just the specifics of what that whistleblower complaint was with regard to, what did he say, non-human biologics and you know, ships from other. I mean, that's where I don't see the evidence. And in fact, his own lawyer or his own law firm that's representing him, they put out a statement saying that there's been a lot of inaccurate news characterizations of what was in the complaint. So that's kind of the specifics of why I don't buy it. I'm just being straight with you. And then just a priori, I think I never understood. So they figure these alien species figured out intergalactic faster than light travel, but they can't figure out self-driving. They keep crashing. It doesn't make.
Real quick. So here he gives his opinion on the UFO subject and the fact that he doesn't believe in UFOs and he doesn't believe that they could get here. He's given all the reasons why. Like, who cares about your opinion when it comes down to what you're reporting? So I think you should stick to the facts. But this pretty much is him telling on himself, giving you pretty much motive on why he thought it was important for him to look into David Grush's past. He's giving you the motive on why he thought it was important. He was the guy. It has to be him. I have to be the guy to come out and dig up the dirt on David Grush because I don't believe in UFOs. I don't believe that what he's saying, and he's getting so much attention, and it's sickening, man. Let's go ahead and listen to some more of this.
Make any sense? What if they can figure out faster than light? Wouldn't they have planes?
This is called a
crash?
question.
Well, I'm not trying to be. I'm just. You asked me kind of frankly, like what I thought.
No,
that's what I meant.
Wasn't me, Ken. Somebody else chimed in. If we can hold off on trying. No, that's okay, Ken. I didn't want you to think that was me chiming in over you. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And sorry to answer your question candidly. So I know people in that space who kind of were peripherally knew him. So then I just tweeted out. I just said during the hearing, I had a tweet that said, if you have good or bad stuff about him, like whatever, I didn't want to bias it. Like, and that's why I put out requests for tips, because if you only rely on people that you know, then there's probably a selection bias of like who are the types of people that you're going to be friends with. So I just put out a call for tips, and I actually got a lot of people that reached out with kind of tidbits, little piece of information, you know, and it was mostly negative, to be honest with you. And to be totally straight, if there was positive stuff, I would put that in there too. There just wasn't really. And so I think because of the way the story turned out, everyone's like, oh, he's really looking for a hit piece. Again, being completely straight with you, I don't believe the UFO stuff. I don't have any insight into whether he believes it or not. Like, I assume he believes what he's saying. I'm not someone that thinks everyone is, you know, grifter. And there's this word grifter has become so loosely used.
Grifter. He brings this up in more than one interview. We have a other clip after we listen to this. I kind of think this is grifting. I kind of think that what you're doing is clout chasing, right? This is what it seems like. This is a straight clout chase. You have no reason. I mean, what type of human being looks for the bad in, and this is another thing. He just said a moment ago that he was looking for information, good or bad, on Grush, and all he got was bad information. Well, I can tell you that, and we all know that pretty much everything we know about Grush that has been reported in the press has been positive information, you know, backing up Grush being a stand-up guy, being corroborated by other people within the DOD. So when he says that he was looking for good or bad information, the good part is disingenuous, because you weren't looking for good, because the good was already out there. So what more were you going to look for? A lot of people have pretty much said all the best things about the guy. So the claim that you would be looking for good or bad, that's just something that you're saying to kind of try to play the middle of the road, or be even killed as far as the approach that you had, which is disingenuous. We know for a fact he put out a Twitter tweet. This is how he says he obtained the information. He put out a tweet and pretty much asked for information from anybody out there who would be willing to give information, good or bad, on Grush. And we know he wasn't looking for good information, so essentially he put out a tweet pretty much asking for any dirt that he could pull up on Grush, is really what he did. And we know the DOD and those guys in those secret rooms have already been badgering and threatening Grush. So he was essentially trolling those people for information. That's what he was doing. So let's go ahead and listen to this some more here.
I don't use that.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah.
I mean? Like people tend.
Well,
So I don't make any comment about his
was that
intentions. But yeah,
was that tweet then the root of what sparked you to go to that specific sheriff station?
no. I knew people in the area, and so it was like I was getting bits and pieces from different people about the stuff that they were saying. And so they were kind of like, look into his. They gave me, you know how people, the intel people, they're vague. They'll be like, look into his background, and they were kind of hinting that it's like, you know, trying to think about how to say this in a way that's like rigorous. Multiple people told me to just look at any run-ins with law enforcement that he had in the past, and it was vague. I think there's this impression that it's like, oh my God, someone planted this and they gave him the direct. It doesn't. If it works, I mean, I understand why people think that, because a lot of media is planted stories. I don't blame people for thinking that. A lot of, when you open the New York Times, most of those stories the White House put in there, or a committee chair in Congress gave to them on a platter. But that's not. If you look through my past, I'm not particularly well connected with like super high ups. Even in the intel community, most of the people I know, they're like rank and file types. They're kind of like Rush. They're like GS-15s, GS-12s, that kind of thing. So it wasn't like it wasn't one person. There's like multiple people telling you something. It's kind of this vague thing. And as a reporter, I can't just post like innuendo. Like somebody told me to look into his background and any run-ins he's had. I can't publish that. So I thought, well, what's a evidence-based way that I can look at that? And I thought, oh, okay, I guess I can do some like local law enforcement searches I just looked up his house in Nexus, and it gave me the address. I just did a search for a few years, and that was that. There's no, I mean, I guess if you want to say that it was planted because I was talking to people and getting the rough impression of what he was like, I guess that's true. But I mean, I would have liked it if somebody had specifics. That would have made my life easier, but that's not how it played out.
If I can ask what you feel the major takeaway from your article is, what would that be?
That these guys are not rigorous. Look at how they responded to my request for comment, which is something journalists do. It's a basic ethical thing because, this happened to me before. I thought I understood something, and there have been cases where they talked me out of doing a story because they provided me context I didn't understand, and I realized, oh, this isn't as simple as I thought. It's not as scandal as I thought. So I call, I'm trying to contact him. He never calls me back. And then maybe like an hour or two after I contact him, some Australian journalist calls me and he says, I mentioned this in the story. He says, why are you reporting on confidential medical records that were leaked to you by members of the intelligence community? And I said to him, where are you getting that from? They're not confidential. And he didn't seem particularly interested in why, like, what I was describing was at odds with whatever it was he had been told, I assume from Grush, since that's the only person that I had approached about the story. And this guy seemed to know the details of it. And the next thing I know, he's on Chris Cuomo's show saying he's doing this because the intelligence community and this and that. So when they take evidence, I can kind of see how they would get to that place. I mean, I think it's possible. I think a lot of journalists do get planted stories. So I see how they make that jump. But again, like I was saying about the UAVs, that's a logical jump that's not necessarily sustained by the facts. Like, again, yes, we do find UAVs. Yes, the government is extremely secretive about it and too secretive about it. I agree with all that. But then to say that they're space aliens and not a Russian drone or a Chinese drone or whatever else, that's not that jump. That's the part that I don't think is sustained by the facts, in which I think in their interactions with the story, I mean, if they're so loose with the facts that they're just going to assert, they ended up having to retract it and issue a correction. News Nation is the one that was reporting this. If Grush and this reporter are just going to loosely say these things, how can you believe what they're saying when he says, "Oh yeah, I have sources that told me about space aliens"? So that's kind of my. I'm not trying to be like some big like jerk about it. I just don't. That's kind of my feeling, I guess.
I mean, I can tell you that you're probably from experience. If you say that you don't believe in something, you'll get a lot of heat for that. So if you don't mind me asking, kind of like a follow up to your feelings towards UAP, what?
Oh yeah. So I'm just trying to. My view is like if you tell readers where you're coming from, they can account for your own biases and. So to me, that's the more honest thing than pretending like you don't have a bias or being like, I'm objective. I don't have a point of view on this. So I'm telling everyone straight up, yeah, I don't really buy it. Again, they're just that logical premise before. How are they going to go faster than light, but they're constantly crashing into stuff?
Yeah.
So is there like an intergalactic Elon Musk and he's selling them shitty driverless AI and they keep slamming into things? It doesn't make any sense to me.
No, and I appreciate your candor and that faster than light travel and crashing overall. That's definitely an interesting topic. But I think what I would love to ask you, because I'm sure your time is limited, but what I would love to ask you is just to kind of expand on, did your feelings on UAP and not believing them play a role in wanting to discredit David Grush, as many people are alleging already and will continue to allege that you are just aiming to take away from his claims. I can.
Well, it's like with science. You start out with a hypothesis, right? And it's like you come in with a null hypothesis, and you do have a feeling, but it's kind of like if you're honest, you're going to be open to having it disproven. And so again, like and also he's a human being, so you don't want to like just want to smash some person up and say they suck or whatever. Like it. So even more than science, when you're looking at molecules and you want to come up with a null hypothesis, there's actually like an ethical component to this too, because there's a human being that you're writing about, and so you don't want to. I didn't ignore any like what's the word exculpatory evidence, and I try to put that in because it helps me sleep at night. Like if I put something negative and I heard something exculpatory or someone else says, "Oh, actually he's good on it," then it's like you put that in there. It's like it just I don't know. It's like feels more decent or whatever. So like I wasn't trying. But so as to your question, I mean, I imagine that's operating at some unconscious level, right? How could it not? I'm going to try to be fair. And I mean, he didn't give me a comment. I told him, I said, I'm more than happy to feature prominently any kind of like, if you have anything that's like, what's the word? Like, maybe there's extenuating circumstances that I don't understand and what's in the records or anything that's like, makes you look better. I'm happy to put in there. He never responded. So I tried to put in the story his statement that he gave to News Nation or whatever. Because again, I'm not just trying to like, I mean, yes, I have my feeling, but like I want to find out what really is going on and not just have some punching bag or something.
Was David Grush, when you reached out to him, did you tell him that the documents were FOIA? Like, where did this medical records thing come from? I know you said Ross Coulthart called you, but like, did he just make that up? Like, where did that stem from?
Well, I can only speculate as to how it came up. In my request for comment, I think I just described it as law enforcement. I can't remember how I described it, but it's not like I was trying to hide it. And then when Ross called me, I tried to explain to him. I was like, what? These aren't private. This is like totally public. But he was kind of like, it sounded like he was in a hurry or something. He was like, okay, understood. And then he just hung up. And that was that. And so I thought that from my saying that these are public, he'd understand that this is like open record stuff. But apparently he didn't. And to his credit, he did correct it when it became clear that it wasn't that. But that was the only contact I had with anybody on like Grush's behalf, other than just sending my request for comment to his attorney.
Do you have thoughts on them creating this story on News Nation? I mean, how did you react?
Well, I don't want to stoop to their level and just guess and say, here's what I think. I mean, I think you can look at it and probably come up with an informed speculation about like why they did what they did. But the reality is, I don't know. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Give a telephone. I mean, just to be straight with you, like I think the same way that you look at something and think, that's weird. How did he find out about this very specific thing in my past? Oh, and he's a national security reporter. He has intel sources. It must have been them. That seems like the same process. You look at some Chinese drone that you don't recognize and say, oh, it must be aliens because I've never seen this before. It's just this looseness of thought where you can jump from one thing to another without necessarily rigorously. I mean, that's my read of it. That's my guess. But yeah, again, I don't want to do what they did and just go around asserting things. And I have no idea what happened.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to answer at least my questions. I'm sorry for kind of dominating. Everybody's got.
Oh, no worries. like I said, I've been reading your FOIA stuff I've been reading you and Government Attic. I think the guy passed away, sadly. And there were not many FOIA warriors back in the day, so there's very few people to look up to. So happy to give you my
Well,
time.
I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. Is there anything you want to add? I mean, everybody's got their hand up. I'm sure everybody wants to ask you a question. I will apologize in advance if anybody comes off a little bit aggressive. Sometimes people can do that. So I don't know how long you want to hang out, but if you want to hang out, I'm more than happy to keep you there and reveal some of these questions, whatever they may be.
Well, I gotta jump.
No worries.
But if anyone has a sincere thing, just message me. I will do my best to answer it.
And
What's the public value of reporting on mental health struggles? What's the public value in that?
Being a drunk is a mental health struggle.
No, PTSD struggles with what is the value? I'm a former journalist, so I know some of these things too. What is the value?
So how do you decide which
is mental health issue?
So you want me to leave out a specific part of it?
No, I'm asking you.
I'm asking you.
What is the public value in reporting on his mental health?
Which part of the document are you going to censor, and how do you decide that? You're going to start picking and choosing which parts of the document you're going to include?
There's always
it doesn't sound like you have an answer.
Could I maybe rephrase Thoreau's question? Since this is kind of your beat, what is your read on Grush? Like, do you feel like this information maybe invalidates his testimony a little bit, or not so much?
If a guy's a drunk, yeah, it makes me a little bit suspicious.
Great article. Thank you for writing it. I truly appreciate it because it adds a lot of clarity to this discussion. But I had one question for you, and that is, I know you open source the information to get more details on Grush and to sort of find a thread that you could just keep pulling on. But do you know if the person who sort of gave you that tip, are they connected in any way to this sort of tree of ufologists within government and retired military personnel?
No, I mean, again, this is a mosaic of different tips I'm getting that you're trying to weave together and get some coherent thing to know what to target with, like, FOIA. This idea, again, right. I get why people are suspicious. Most journalism is planted.
I'm not suspicious at all. I just want to get that so that way there's no way for people to spin conspiracy theories as to what that is. Because, the article kind of came out of nowhere, but I mean, when you're making claims that big, throwing intelligence people under the bus,
right?
Don't be surprised when people look into your background.
No, I'm not surprised. I mean, you talk to military people, and the DoD is like a huge institution. It's not just Intel guys. That's what I'll say. So, like, I mean, he worked in Intel, but DoD is massive, and there's so many. It's like the biggest government. It's the biggest federal agency. So, the people that work in that space have interactions with all kinds of different people, and not even just former government contractors and things. So those are the types of people that I'm talking to. It was both Intel and non-Intel.
Hey, Ken, I got a quick question for you. In comparison to the rest of the articles you normally write, what's the level of hate or attention this one has gotten? Like, have you gotten, I mean, where would you put it on the scale?
Well, it's strange. By far the most of, I think, any story I've ever done. And I'm no stranger to, people getting upset by stuff that I write. But this one by far. But what was strange about it is it's not from ordinary people. I like to, if someone sends me an email, I'll look up their name because I'm curious who they are or whatever. It's mostly these, like, UFO, I'm trying to be polite, UFO enthusiasts, or however you would call it.
UAP enthusiasts, UFO enthusiasts, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a lot of kind of, like, I really like to judge I'm really curious about what the reactions are. And it wasn't like just, some random mechanic. It's specifically people that pay really close attention to UFOs. And it's like, I must have gotten, I don't want to overstate it, but it has to be hundreds and maybe 1,000 emails. It's great. Like the second most angry response I've gotten isn't even close.
I know you said you had to bounce, Ken, but if I could maybe just end it on a good note. You had said that the messages you received about David Grush were primarily bad, but you had mentioned maybe a good one. What was the good one?
I don't think I did. Now, I don't want to suggest that, everybody has, what's it called? Positive qualities. That it clearly, there's always a selection bias. It's like comment boxes. I used to be a cashier when I was a kid. I remember the comment box, and I remember thinking like, there's never going to be a positive comment in any of those. You know what I mean? So I think that probably. I try my best to solicit as much as I can to get a rounded picture, but there probably always is a little bit of that bias towards criticism.
I got you. And I apologize.
I don't think I did here. No, I don't think I did. And I got a lot of tips. I'm trying to think back. I did have one friend who's very well connected, and he said that he's a respected guy. It was kind of vague though. It was like not very specific. He was just like, yeah, people like him or something. But that was the most. But I don't want people to take. Everybody has redeeming qualities. I don't want to I'm critical of what he says before Congress. And if he has any problems, I hope that he gets help, or maybe he's already gotten help and he's fine now. It's not personal. It's about the hearings. But I'm sure he has redeeming qualities. Everybody does. Literally everybody.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate that, Ken. And you can stay as long as you want, but I know you said you had to bounce, so I don't want to keep pulling you back in.
Yeah. No, I got to go. All right. See you guys.
Thanks so much, man.
Thanks, Ken.
Bye.
All right. So after listening to this guy sit up there and just like Mackie said, pretty much say a bunch of nothing. All he really said at the end of the day is that he doesn't believe in UFOs. He was pissed off because it gained so much attention and enough to where there was a UFO hearing and the Congress was paying attention. So he was sitting back stewing along with a lot of other hard skeptics out there who felt the same way. And if you notice, they haven't been getting a lot of voice lately, like the Mick West, the Stephen Greenstreets. Those were the go-to guys prior to the UFO hearing. And once the media saw that this was actually being taken seriously, this information was going in under oath, then you don't see a lot of those guys being interviewed in the current state. So he's pissed off about it, and because he has an outlet, he wants to pretty much have a biased opinion and try to make a little bit of noise on this. I think, and I agree. A couple things here. The DOD is definitely involved in this for sure. We know this. He states intel guys gave him, or inside guys gave him intel on this story. Maggie says he hopes this guy successfully discredited himself with this interview. I agree too. Because as a reporter, you can't take that type of viewpoint. And then at the end of the day, just what type of person are you? What type of person are you, right? My whole thing is, looking at this, maybe Klippenstein should check his own mental health, right? He really thought it was okay to take this route and shamefully slander David Grush. Where are his morals, right? So maybe he should take a moment and check his own mental health status. And it's not a slight at him because, like I said before, I think we all have a little something that we can work on, or, some things, it's this with the society that we live in and how crazy it is in this society. I think we all could use a little therapy at the end of the day. So Derek Galloway just simply wants to slap this guy. And I understand, I understand. You get the same feeling. And when he talked about how, when they talk about gaslighting, right? So he made it a point to talk about how the only contact or feedback he's getting is from people within the UFO community. Now, go into detail then. Tell us what those emails said, because I'm pretty sure what they're saying is, pretty much what we're saying here today. Like, what was the point of what you said? In the way that he is spinning it without giving the details of the email just seems like UFO people are just rallying behind and spewing hate at me because I don't believe in UFOs. No, that's not the case. You're just being a bad person, man, at the end of the day. So, wonder if that guy is no longer a clerk because he couldn't count common sense. Yeah, I mean, exactly, Magneticus. That's true. True fact. Derek Galloway, as far as Mick West goes, I will say he is annoying, but he does bring evidence to his arguments more so than other skeptics. Yeah, he definitely does. The only thing with Mick West is, and I guess I agree. I do appreciate what Mick West brings to the table, no doubt. What I will say is, and what you'll end up seeing is, hard skeptics usually have an answer for everything. So, regardless on what the sighting is or what the information that comes out, hard skeptics usually will make up a rebuttal for it, either way it goes. Now, a good skeptic would, if the information comes across and it seems like it could be valid or there may be some weight to it, a good skeptic is going to approach it open-minded and be like, you know what, that makes sense. Let me go ahead and take a look at that a little bit further. Now, Mick West might be doing that right now because he said, I haven't checked his Twitter in a little bit, so I don't know what he's really saying in rebuttal to any of this stuff. But, a good skeptic is one that's going to be open-minded. It's like we did a show on skeptic versus non-skeptic logic, and we kind of cover how, different categories of where people may fall. So you look at this chart and you see where you fall. And, a lot of the people out there, like the Green Streets, and obviously this guy would fall in the hard skeptic category because these people just believe in not believing. And then because that's the way you feel, then you want to go ahead and use the power that you have in the media to go ahead and slander this guy. Now, truthfully, from the way it sounds, a lot of it, I'm sure, had to do with his own personal feelings, as he showed. But then we know, his connections to the DOD, and it's no coincidence that he says he has friends in the DOD because let me go ahead and bring a couple things up here, right? So turns out that this is his dad. This is his dad. So let me go ahead and take a look at this here. This is Stephen Klippenstein. Something stinks, right? Ken Klippenstein's dad works in National Labs, part of the Department of Energy. This is his father. This is his dad. So not saying that his dad had any influence on why he came out and did this, but you have to probably know that they probably know a lot of the same people, right? So with that being said, Derek Galloway says, we got Maggie. Shows his ignorance by labeling him a drunk, right? Now that was just disrespectful. Just called him a drunk. Like, you don't even have that evidence on that, right? You just have a couple police reports that said that he was drinking, but you go as far as to label him a drunk. That's how you know it's personal. That's how you know what he's doing is coming from personal hatred. Let's see, Magneticus. Some clerks will tell you that you owe $17.22 and you hand them $20.22, so you get a five back, and then they look at you funny, and it's common sense, right? Like, I'm doing this so you can give me a solid $5. It's common sense. See, if you drink one drink, now it's drunk. And you can see that in normal life. Like people who just don't drink at all, yeah, they look at a person that might have a drink or two and consider them as drinking too much. So it's all, once again, it's all about perception at the end of the day. We don't know really what the details were behind that. He just got the police report. He hasn't talked to his wife to know exactly what the circumstances was, but he goes as far as to slander him and call him a drunk in public. That's defamation of character. If you ask me, I would, if I'm Grush, I'd be looking at that. And based off of those statements, like, forget just the report. A reporter obviously has the ability to report on anything that they want to report on. But when you get to making personal remarks in that way and defaming someone's actual character by calling them drunks and, talking about their mental state, that's when the problem comes up. That's when we have a problem. So Derek Galloway says at the end of these guys are pissed off because ufology now is in the court of Congress and it's there to stay. Politicians will use any angle to get money for these things they want passed and to get the vote. Yeah, that's true. A lot of skeptics are pissed off right now, Derek Galloway. A lot of them are. If you look at the same skeptics who were pretty loud and vocal and were getting attention, we looked at a few shows back that the public being polled, 57% of the public believed that the government was hiding UFOs. There was 23% that said they didn't know, and then 21% that said, no, it's not happening. So we knew at that point that the skeptics were only a minority when it comes to the total public being polled, and it's showing now because they're not able to be as vocal, or their opinion. Once you saw that, then you understood that they were the minority, so you don't have to listen to them. You don't listen to what they're saying, and then they stop talking, right? So Maggie says, the way Klippenstein got aggressive when the interviewer asked about mental health is telling, and then Klippenstein reversed it and asked the question instead of answering. Exactly. Welcome, Mr. Tom King. Happy Friday to you too, sir. TGIF. The great Tom King, Mr. Phoenix Lights. TFK, Tom FK, if you didn't know. And Magneticus Attractus, if elected, I will lower your taxes. Right. Derek Galloway, ufology spotlight overload that's also bringing bipartisanship. Right. That's the other thing they hate, right? It's not in a lot of those lobbyists' best interests to have people getting along. There's agendas that need to be pushed, and they're focusing on things that what would you think? Better humanity, right? This is what everyone's in an uproar for things that will help humanity get out of the state that we're currently in. It's crazy when you think about it. It's crazy. Tom King said, I haven't been following this closely. Ironically, just got back from DC. I don't know whether to be proud, happy for you or sad for you there, Tom King, because, there's definitely a lot of good stuff happening on the UFO front in DC, but the rest of that stuff we don't even really get into. You already know. So with that being said, yeah, Stephen Klippenstein, and someone should dig into Ken's past. You know what I mean? I'm sure Ken has some stuff that he wouldn't want out there. I mean, and if you're going to do it, then expose your own dirt as well. I always feel like that. Don't go pointing your fingers at someone else until you've pointed them at yourself and addressed the issues that you have personally. Do that before you reach out and start trying to, criticize and slander someone else. So that's bad. So with that being said, looking back here, this is what this just shows you what type of person Ken Klippenstein is, right? So he goes on Twitter. This apparently happened today. He goes on Twitter and tweets, after 3 years, The Intercept has let me go. And then left it at that. People picked it up, including, as you see in the lower right-hand corner, News Nation, who ran a report on it, and the guy was lying. He was lying. He was trolling. As you see in this tweet right there, LMAO, because they reported it, but he really hadn't been let go. The Intercept probably really needs to thinking about separating themselves from him. He works with Breaking Points as well, as we're going to go ahead and take a look, because Breaking Points, he actually features on that show, and I like the show, especially when they cover UFO stuff. But They know each other well, and he agreed to go on the show to speak his word again right after he did this Twitter space. Now you have to ask yourself, you would think, or you would think maybe he thinks that he goes on there and he gets a great light shined on him. But the host Sagar actually asked some pretty tough questions and kind of put him in a spot where it really showed what his motives were. They asked him a lot of the tough questions that unfortunately the Hill, I think he was on the Hill recently, the Hill didn't ask him. They kind of were just reading off the teleprompter and not really speaking from their mind, asking the tough questions. But one of the people he works with at Breaking Points definitely did. And I put together the best part of that interview, the best parts. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that. And once again, yeah, scummy thing for this guy to do. But let's go ahead and take a look at how they had him jammed up here.
Well, let's get into the nitty-gritty, I guess, of the story itself. Let's start broad strokes. What is the story about? What is it?
Well, so he's kind of the star witness of the, subcommittee that's looking at the UFO allegations. Not just him, but there are two pilots as well. And so in the reporting on it, I noticed a phrase popping up again and again: a decorated war hero, decorated war hero, decorated war hero. And I'm not disputing that he is, but when I hear that, it's kind of like, okay, well, where's the critique? Like, where's the negative side, or where's the...
Right there. Where's the critique? Everybody's talking about decorated war hero, decorated war hero. But where's the critique? Where's the other side? Who worries about that? If there's a other side, then someone would come out and say it. So it just, once again, I just had to say that because they're showing where his head is at and the way he's coming into this and how he's looking at this. So let's go.
Like vetting, and I didn't see any of that by any of the media, so I thought, well, I'm going to go and look and see what I can find. And so I know people both in DoD, in the intelligence community, and I did a call for tips to try to broaden the picture. It really just came from a mosaic of different sources that gave me ideas of what was going on. We can talk about that more. But really my motive was just, it didn't feel like anybody was vetting this guy. But, in the police reports, his wife called him an alcoholic and said that this happened repeatedly. That, I think, is a concern. I think that if someone's an alcoholic, yeah, that should be factored into your assessment of what their credibility is. But
but if it's alcohol related to PTSD, I mean, let's be serious. I mean, he in sworn testimony, he admits he had a problem with PTSD. He says it was, I'm assuming he's related to these alcoholic incidents. He got treatment per your own reporting. And all of the incidents he's now testified to, sworn testimony as well as a whistleblower's post treatment. So I'm just trying to understand, like, what is the value of this information being put forward? What are we supposed to do with this information?
Well, I included in the story an example of the dozens of White House staffers who had their clearances revoked for smoking weed, including in states where it was legal.
Right.
Places where it's legal. So, like, this is part of the clearance process. And so, again, this whole focus on PTSD, and if it makes him not credible, that was never something I said. That was a focus that he made trying to get ahead of the story in the statement that he put out. My interest was always the alcoholism. And I mean, I guess I feel as though there's some kind of grandstanding around this stuff, because the reality is, if you're going to, say, get a medical procedure, go see a surgeon, you find out he's an alcoholic, that's probably going to factor into your deciding somewhat, right?
Right. Well, I mean, is he an active alcoholic? Do you know that?
We know that from the reports his wife said he was.
Okay, in 2018.
Yes.
But we don't know anything since then.
No. It was a general frustration of multiple people that I talked to, was feeling like they described this guy as unreliable, and they were frustrated that this stuff that they knew about was not being accounted for, and they were seeing the descriptions I was describing before. Decorated hero, decorated hero. Right. They didn't feel like that was the whole story.
I guess what I'm confused by is you're telling me this, but you don't quote any of these people in the story. The only facts that you can really attest to in the story are FOIA, and obviously the tip. And again, zero issue with that. But don't you think that's the actual relevant part? I mean, why aren't you quoting people on background and people who work for him who said he's unreliable? You're saying it here. I think that's fine. I mean, obviously,
sure,
it's a public forum, but the way that it's being read, and I have to be honest with you, I respect your work, but the assemblage of the facts here, it does kind of read as a smear job. You're basically like, he had a PTSD incident, or he says it's PTSD incident. He had two alcoholics. You quote two people who basically say, he's full of it. You only quote one expert who says that the UFO hearing is a travesty. And I mean, one of the things I really don't understand is how many conversations we had about Pentagon spinning us, but you're credulously citing the explanation, the 1990s explanation on Roswell, and credulously quoting like Susan Go, who's the Pentagon spokesperson, who said that he's full of it. I mean, why should we believe these people? Do you understand what I'm saying? The assembly of the facts in your story, yes. Taking his like, and this guy's a liar. That's what
I think that's a good instinct. You don't want to side with the institutions, but I think you also don't want to reflexively oppose them. I'm not saying that you're doing that. I think that you know, I have that tendency too.
I agree with you. I think you're doing the right thing, and I've always, you know, I've stood by a lot of your work, but I'm like, why aren't any of these people quoted then? Why aren't you quoting these people?
Well, essentially, the reason that I did the FOIA was because they're kind of describing it as unreliable. I'm thinking, well, do I want to just use this sort of innuendo? Or can I try to substantiate it? And if you look at the FOIA request, you can FOIA my FOIA, or I think I posted it too.
You did.
I asked for a whole range of things. So this idea that I was being pointed at one specific event, that's just not true. People were describing things to me. It sounds like there's certain themes. I go on Nexus, which journalists have, and so you can find their home address. The home address was not furnished to me, and then you can just file a FOIA, and I did it for like 7 years. And so that was what came back. So there's no sort of, like, so I guess my answer to your question, I'm not trying to be evasive. Like, I did talk to intelligence and DOD people, but the way in which that influences the reporting is a little bit more subtle than I think that the discourse gives credit to. It's not like they're pointing you at one specific event. They give you a sense, and then you use that to go and use other methods to try to substantiate.
I don't want to belabor the point, but just so I'm clear in my head of kind of the timeline, you were seeing the coverage of this hearing.
Yes.
You took issue with the fact that, you know, he made extraordinary claims, right? And they're secondhand claims, and he hasn't produced publicly any evidence outside of his own testimony, which was being backed up by his personal reputation and credibility. You're frustrated by the fact that there doesn't seem to be a vet on the other side. And then you reach out to your sources, or do they come to help us understand the timeline?
All of the above. So there are people that I know in DOD and in Air Force that I figure probably know this guy. So I started asking them. They're telling me he's unreliable. And I think, okay, well, how can I find more? Because people have bits and pieces. It's not really enough to run with. So then I do a call out for tips. And in the tweet, I said, if you have positive or negative, because I don't, to the extent that there's always going to be a bias towards negative. Because I used to work at Target as a cashier, and I remember the suggestion box, and I thought, man, those have all got to be negative comments. There's not going to be a single positive suggestion. So,
right, and I mean, I get the problem though is like you're kind of saying there's a selection bias here, and one of the things Grush has alleged is that he was retaliated against, and is being actively retaliated against by the intel.
And there's strong evidence for that.
Right.
I take him at his word for that. Yes.
Well, but how do you know that you're not part of that? Right? That the people who are reaching out to you aren't basically like, yeah, I mean, look, they're basically violating their job by talking to you in the first place and pointing to you towards each direction. Let's be honest. I mean, he's correct. And in that this is probably made known to his authorities. They probably took a look at his file and they gave you a call whenever they saw your number. Nothing wrong with that. You did nothing wrong.
Understand.
They're the ones who are doing it. But, I mean, do you not feel, though, as if you're part of a little bit of a campaign here?
No, that's a fair question.
It?
Again, that's why I try in my reporting to find them as opposed to them like coming to me independently, you know. And they're and again, these things are complicated. These are not monoliths. There's the senior executive class. There's appointees. Those guys are the demons that you really want to watch out for. And so, I mean, the people that I talked to clearly didn't like him, and they didn't believe him about the UFO stuff. And so, insofar as that is a motive, that's true.
Sure.
You know, I want to be very frank about that.
Right.
But it's a little different than like a Biden administration appointee being like, this is embarrassing, we have to destroy this guy. It's so the concerns are fair, but I just want to point out that it's different. There's a range of claims he makes, and I think a lot of them are probably true. Where we depart is when he says that it's space aliens or that we've recovered. But the idea, I know from my sources, and I think parts of this are public, there is a UAV recovery, crash recovery program. There is constantly retaliation against whistleblowers. I know that because I work with them and there's data on this. It happens when you report something to the Inspector General, there's a target on your back. So I totally take him at his word on that. And his lawyer was a former Inspector General of the IC, very respected person. I know people that know him. All I've heard was good things. So the whole retaliation thing, I assume that's true. They don't like people going to Congress and reporting things.
No.
You know, again, where we depart is the specifics. I also think it's true that there is a UAV crash recovery program. I just think just because you don't know and can't recognize what the technology is, that doesn't necessarily mean it's extraterrestrial.
Right, but why don't you present evidence to that fact then? I mean,
how do you mean?
Believe it. Like you say, you don't believe him. I mean, listen, I don't know whether I believe him or not. To me, it's just extraordinary whenever you're like, you're before Congress, you're telling this under sworn testimony. I'm like, okay, well, I want to hear it from the other guy. Sean Kirkpatrick says it's not true. To me, that's great. We got two people under sworn testimony. They say it's not true. Why don't you put forward a story then being like, yeah, he's wrong. You know, the people are lying. Or, you know, I mean, I used to do this for a living. You could quote these people and be like, Grush colleagues say he's a liar. Grush colleagues say that he's completely not true. I mean, this is where I just don't understand.
Well, I'm in a difficult position because it's like, I don't want to, I mean, again, I disagree with them, but it's like, I want to rely on stuff that is really easy to substantiate.
FOIA.
Documents, and his wife too, current wife, not just ex-wife. If I'm just going off of stuff that people don't like him said verbally, it feels kind of like a smear, you know, like kind of unfair. And so it's like, I get where you're coming from, but it's like, put yourself in my shoes. Like, how would you navigate these kind of vague descriptions, you know?
First of all, we don't know if he's an alcoholic, because why?
Right.
You know,
And
who
he
knows
says
what people say
he
on
says he's
911.
recovered from PTSD.
He says he's recovered from PTSD. His best friend killed himself, according to him. I know for a fact he served in Afghanistan. You know, these are pretty traumatic events. Millions of veterans kind of suffer the same thing. So, I mean, are you saying that's disqualifying for the entire story? Like, that's what I think a lot of people are upset about. I think it's fine to present the facts. Like I said, I mean, I'm just reading this story, and you're like, you only quote 2 people, Jack Murphy and then this other guy. You're citing Roswell credulously. No offense, but, like, that's crazy. That's like citing the JFK record and saying that that's the definitive norm here. I mean, when I'm reading this, all I'm supposed to take away is like, all right, you know, alcoholic, PTSD, guy's got mental health, 2 experts. You didn't present the other side. So do you see why people took an issue with it?
I understand.
Yeah.
I mean, to some extent, I'm in a position where it's like everyone is doing the decorated warrior, all this stuff, and it's kind of like, well, now my job is I have to try to give people stuff they haven't gotten.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm just trying to be totally candid.
You can talking.
Maybe that's bad, but that's
right.
I'm just trying to give you an insight of my thought process of what it is.
All right, so that was pretty much everything we have for this guy, right? And then once again, you know, I just like the way Sagar actually grilled him and pretty much held him to the fire, like you're not naming any sources. Like, what is really the point of what you're doing? And he, as you heard in the Twitter space, and as you heard here, he's just trying to make excuses for why this was the right way to approach this. And like I said, you know, reporters always, you know, they have the right to dig things up, but what are your motives at the end of the day? Like, put all the journalistic, you know, tactics aside. At the end of the day, as far as a human being, was this the right thing to do as a human, right? And if he was going through something, do you think this helps him? Do you think this helps his mental state in any way? Are you trying to have him regress, or, you know, you're trying to pretty much destroy this guy? All because you're upset that he was being held up as a stand-up guy, a hero. They were talking about his accolades, and it just bothered you that much. What type of person is that? What type? And like I stated, his dad worked National Labs, part of the DOE. Let's dig into that. You know, do an interview and talk about that. Let's talk about your relationship with your dad, right? What is your dad connected to? Let's talk about that. You know, instead of doing what you did here, it does not come off well. But let's see, Tom King, take your time, see how it shakes out in a couple months of who jumped into this to try to discredit Grush. And Maggie OGs, take 2 seconds to undo everything he said. Wow, exactly. Not sure if I want what others gave him. Let's see. He might have Hogwarts or something. PJ says if Grush had and welcome PJ. PJ says if Grush had multiple arrests for fraud and domestic violence and had a gambling issue, it would be valid. This is an attack. Ken wants his dad's attention. Yeah, and that could be the angle right there. That could be the angle. I'm sure they have discussions on this topic as well. Given his connections, I think he is young enough to have smoke blown up his rear, and then he believes this is the right thing to do, kind of wind him up and watch him go. And that could be the case too. But here's the thing. I mean, the guy, if you know, and I thought this was just a guy who came out the woodworks, but apparently he does a lot of reporting on the government, and he's appeared in a lot of different places once I did some research on him. So you would think he just came out of nowhere and maybe he's a little naive, but the guy has tackled some topics, you know, that kind of lead me to believe that, you know, maybe he does understand what he's doing. So if you look him up and look at some of the reporting that he's already done in the past, he's touched some other subjects in a way, in the same type of way. So I think this is his angle. This is, like a shock reporter sort of person. I think that's what he is. But at the end of the day, something stinks, and he won't stop what's going on here. But moving into what we're going to do here, because this is the mentality of disclosure. And I thought, obviously, that was like perfect timing on how the story came into play because, when we talk about disclosure, what is the mental state of disclosure? But first, before we do that, let's go ahead and
ask the chat.
How do you feel about Klippenstein's attempt to smear Grush? And apparently, by the comments that you've already left, it's pretty apparent how you feel about his attempt to smear Grush. Totally immoral, and he wants to talk about ethics, being ethical. What part of this was ethical? What part of this was ethical? Just human to human, right? Human to human. How is this morally right for you to take this angle on this guy, right? It's just not. So we're going to go ahead and get into the next part of the show here, which is going to be the mentality of disclosure. So we have a few things. I mean, this is where it gets a little deep because we're faced with disclosure confirmation in this moment. We're heading towards it. How are people? So us in ufology, we pretty much have our mind wrapped around what's going to happen here or what might be the next step here. So the realism or the reality of the current situation is already apparent to us. But for some of those out there, some skeptics might feel like in religions, and we'll cover all that stuff, don't want to embrace the potential change that we have to face in the moment of disclosure or confirmation. So what are people thinking? What's going on in people's minds as we come into this here? And we're going to go ahead and take a look at the first part of this because which is the paradigm shift, right? So I'm going to go ahead and look at give you some stuff here. So paradigm shift and cognitive dissonance, right? So the revelation of extraterrestrial visitors would actually usher in a paradigm shift that challenges fundamental beliefs about human uniqueness and our place in the universe. Now, this could lead to cognitive dissonance as individuals struggle to reconcile established worldviews with the new reality. The psychological discomfort arising from cognitive dissonance may lead to an anxiety, confusion, and even denial as people grapple with the unfamiliar. So you'd ask then, how could the discovery of extraterrestrial visitors change how we actually see ourselves? And you can answer that if you would like. But, one of the angles would be, looking at the potential of running into or having to change the way that we think based on aliens being real and them being present with us in a situation where we may have to commingle or have our species get along with theirs, realizing we're not the only smart ones out there, or we're not the top of the totem pole, then, it's something that I don't think that a lot of people want to, they don't want to realize that this is something that is actually happening. Like, this is true. Like, we're not the top of the totem pole when it comes to understanding that we're not alone here. And in the past, if you look at past instances of people struggling with this sort of idea, look at something like, when people thought the earth was flat. It was a point in time in our past when people just swore the earth was flat. You couldn't tell them anything different, and it changed their whole world view once they realized that the earth was round. And you still have people today, some people still swear that the earth is flat. But it's just one of those moments in humanity's history or in actually even in the present, where we're facing a paradigm shift where we have to open our minds to understand that things will be, the way we understand things will be different here going forward. So that would be what what we talk about under paradigm shift. Now, end of anthropocentrism. So for centuries, humanity has viewed itself as the pinnacle of creation. The presence of advanced extraterrestrial beings would shatter this anthropocentric perspective, potentially leading to feelings of insignificance and existential crisis. Some of us may confront questions about the meaning of life, our purpose, and the implications of our existence. Now, when you think about the end of anthropocentrism, think of examples in our history where we had a culture change, where we had to change our beliefs, or and how that made people feel, right? So, the change in thinking would lead to positive shifts like greater humility and a sense of shared responsibility for our planet. It might encourage cooperation and unity among us all. So that's one of the things that we hope we get to. So we're with the current. I always say people say that things will be the same way that they are now once confirmation or disclosure comes, and I say you shouldn't want that to be the case. So how can we position ourselves to be able to change the way that we view what our potential is for the future? So, and as far as advice, okay, so giving advice for others advice that we could offer for handling feelings of not mattering, because some people will feel, that they're that our place in the universe, that we're insignificant in the grand scheme of everything that's out there. So in the way that you would position that each of us, pretty much, we all have unique roles to play in this thing here, right? So we just have to reposition our thought process on how we fit into the grand scheme, how we fit into the full picture. And because currently we feel like we're the top, we're number one. Like there's nothing more intelligent than a human being. As far as when we look on Earth, the hierarchy or the food chain, that we're at the top of the food chain. But when you realize that this thing is full of life out there, then you kind of get to a point to where you feel like, or where you understand that that's no longer the case. So looking at that, you get into like fear of the unknown. Because we don't know where we're going, right? We don't know how this could turn out. These things could be benevolent. They could be malevolent. So if they're benevolent, then we have an idea of how we would like for things to go. We'd like for things to be, us meeting them, us opening lines of communication, figuring out how we can work together and redirect the path of humanity, whatever that may be. But then the flip side to that is these things could be benevolent. So that means when we end up confronting these things, that it turns out like they're reporting down in Peru, where we have to worry about protecting ourselves. So it's understandable that people out there that may not understand where we're at in this may end up having some sort of breakdown, or just the fear of what it is that we're facing, fear of the unknown. There's a lot of people out there who are experiencers who say it's love and light, based on their experiences with these extraterrestrials, that we're going to be okay. A lot of people preach that message. And, it's just, is that really where we're going to go with this? We don't know. So it's really fear of the unknown for us all. Because I can tell you myself, I feel like there's a little bit of both. And really, it just depends on which side of that we get exposed to first. So should I be worried about my family, my grandchildren, great grandchildren? Should I be worried about the world that they'll end up going into, knowing that now this is a reality? And I think a lot of people out there also struggle with that as well. I think that's one of the big things when it comes to the realization. I mean, the problem with it is that we don't really have any time to plan this out and think it through as far as how we're going to get there, because they're already here. They're already here. And it could be tomorrow that we have that contact where, it's full confirmation. They've shown themselves. And then now what do we do at that point? So when you think about the world at large and how everybody fits into this, and what's how does this affect you mentally? What side do you stand on? What would be your advice really to people who would be in fear of taking that next step, or embracing this new reality? And I guess that's pretty much what we're looking at here. So Maggie, in a nutshell, I think personally it's about getting comfortable with uncertainty and not knowing everything. Yeah, I mean, and we have to depend on each other. It's hard, right? Because we haven't got there yet. It's hard to say how we would handle it until we actually go through the process. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't prep ourselves for it. Excuse me. Which I think that's definitely something that we should do. So, fear of the unknown is a big one. And I think that's some of the reasons why you have skeptics and people out there that just don't want to believe it. I don't think that it's just they don't believe it. I think it's they don't want to believe it because of the implications that this could have going forward. And, I don't blame them for that, but it's something that they need to voice. They need to say that so they can, get the help that they need to try to deal with this, because there is no escaping it. It's something that's definitely here and something that we definitely have to do. So cultural shock, actually technological and cultural shock, right? So the advanced technology and cultural differences of extraterrestrial visitors could trigger feelings of inadequacy and cultural shock. The sudden exposure to technology beyond human comprehension might lead to feelings of inferiority or a sense of helplessness. Additionally, encountering a culture vastly different from our own could challenge established norms, causing confusion and disorientation. So a question would be, if their technology is too hard to understand, how do you, does that make you feel helpless? Or do you see, what do you see positive or negative in that? If their technology is so advanced, do you feel like, well, we might as well not even try because, they're so far advanced that we have no shot in defending ourselves against them? Because I think that's one of the things that people think about as well is, it's one of the first things that they say. Their technology is so advanced, but if you look at it positively, their technology is so advanced that they can help us jump to that next level in as far as like free energy and things like that. Like it could be a blessing in disguise. So it just depends on how you look at it. But, there's going to be people out there that look at it one way. Some of them look at it the other way. I think what we need to do is we need to sit down and talk this out. I mean, and that's kind of what we're doing now. So, I mean, any ideas that you have when it comes to how we could handle the cultural shock, definitely chime in, because it's going to take all of us as humanity to have the conversation and figure out on each one of these subjects here, these topics, what's going to be the best way to deal with these things, right? So let me see here. Another one here. suggesting some ways that people might deal with feelings of inadequacy. So dealing with the feelings involves acknowledging that it's okay to not have all the answers immediately, right? Which is what I just said. And then learning, asking questions, and seeking guidance from those who understand can help ease in the inadequacy and confusion. So moving on to society and religion. So social and religious implications. And this is a big one. This is one of the ones that a lot of people feel like are one of the things that are getting in the way of us getting to disclosure. And I don't really like to get into religion and all that, but I know that that's something that's important to a lot of people. And religious beliefs can automatically put you in the skeptic category, where you would just say that no, this isn't happening. This is, I don't believe what's going on because of my religious beliefs. So looking at that, the discovery of these ETs could profoundly affect religious beliefs and practices. Some might find it difficult to integrate the existence of extraterrestrial life with religious teachings, potentially causing spiritual upheaval. The very concept of a divine plan and the uniqueness of human salvation could come into question, leading to spiritual introspection and reevaluation. So, one of the questions would be, if we find ETs or aliens, how might that change what people believe in their religions? And let me check here. Check the chat. Okay, this is Maggie. I have to check some sources, but with AI stuff, Elon Musk allegedly said he is living in suspended disbelief. Otherwise, what is the point of him building his cars? Double check sources, though. And that would make sense. You know, a lot of people, you know, this fake bubble that we live in, that we just saw when with the whole pandemic thing, how quickly that fell apart. You know, we feel so comfortable with the way that we currently live that it'd be hard for a lot of people to imagine anything else. And that goes the same thing with religion. So with religion, based on what the book says, for a lot of people is just, that's what it is. And it can't be anything different than that. So whether or not you have physical proof of these extraterrestrials being here, a lot of religious views won't allow certain groups of people to step out and have that open-minded conversation. They say the Catholic Church has stated that they would be willing to embrace this because everything is under a God or under God. And, you know, these would simply be God's creations. And you know, and I tend to look at it that way. Because, you know, when you look at it and you say created the heavens and everything in it, that would include all galaxies and planets that are out there. So whether you're religious or not, you know, I guess this really only applies to those who would have some sort of religious background. But then at the same time, you know, parallel to that would be just the societal bubble. A lot of people just feel like the status quo is what it is, and there's nothing more. We're just here by ourselves. We're the only ones out here. But the thing is that we have to break that, because where we're going, we can't, the current state of society or the current program that we have set up isn't going to work, isn't going to translate, you know, post-disclosure, post-confirmation. Things would have to change. Things that we normally are used to, and a lot of people are scared of that. Like, who wants to give up? So you have I'll give you an example. You have rich people out there, people with a lot of money, so they live at a higher level. They get to look down on everyone else. Do you really think those people want to change the way society works right now? where we may go into a situation where money may not be worth anything and may end up being just a piece of paper? Do you think they want to give up their status as who they are in order for humanity to push forward? And I think that's a problem, because money would be the reason why they wouldn't want to embrace what is currently happening. So they'd rather ignore it. It's not happening. Let's just stay in this bubble, and that way I can keep the status that I have. But a lot of people who don't have money, would be obviously the ones that would embrace this and want the change. So it's when you think about it, it gets deep. So Maggie and 10 says not 100% on my memory. And that's okay. We're just talking this through anyways. Magneticus, in the beginning, God created. Magneticus, case you wonder where God came from. And Common Cold Data changes CDC. PJ, First Nation people are fine with star people. Okay. Figure God is like Hogwarts, fictional. Okay. And Abracadabra, LOL. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, when it gets into that, like I stated, it's the parallel between society and then religion. It's kind of the same thing as far as living in a protected bubble, being used to what you're normally used to, and being able to step outside of that with the new realization that you would have. Because, like I said, things have to change. You have to be able, so just going to work, just the normal things we do. Going to the store to get food, right? We have this machine set up in society, and it may not function the same way once we get past that point. Once again, we saw that with the pandemic. We saw a breakdown of everything, and it took only a mere matter of days for that to happen. So how can we prepare ourselves, to be prepared? I used to look at doomsday preppers and think those guys were crazy. But I realized, those guys are prepared, actually, right? Those guys are prepared in case this comfortability that we have in society breaks down. They understood then that it didn't take much for this to all fall apart. And, I think a lot more people need to be aware of that, or at least think like that this thing could change at any moment. You look overseas, third world countries, there's no such thing as a protective societal bubble for them to live in. They live in the actual reality of, the direct connection of humans and earth, and foraging for food and doing all those sorts of things. So, we're kind of spoiled here in a lot of the Western nations. So with that being said, we have unity and identity. So unity and identity. While the discovery of extraterrestrial visitors could initially trigger fear and disarray, it might also lead to a sense of global unity. Humanity could find common ground in facing an unprecedented situation, transcending national, cultural, and ideological divisions. This shared experience might reshape collective identity and foster a stronger sense of interconnectedness. So this is where we could go, right? So if people wouldn't be as reluctant to let go of what we're used to here, then we could be embracing a world where everybody's united. Everyone understands that we are all one species, and then we can collectively work as humanity to face the rest of the galaxy or anything that's out there. So a couple of things here. Finding aliens might initially invoke fear and confusion because it challenges what people know. Then a shared realization of facing the unknown might help people unite despite differences. And then you have the discovery could change how people define their identity. And it's like basically shifting from seeing themselves as individual cells to realizing that they're part of a vast, intricate organism. And I love to see that, right? I love to see when something like that would happen here. So Mankey says there's no time to ask questions. There's a lot of westernized people, in my opinion, are too busy focusing on keeping up with the Joneses and investing in personal status. It does matter in society as it is, but not as much as we're led to believe. It's all an illusion, truthfully. It's an illusion. We're born into it, so we know nothing other than the society that's been created around us, and we bring our kids into it. And I think that we will have to look at this differently, because just the keeping up with the Joneses is just something that money creates, and we'll end up getting into that on the next show when we talk about intergalactic capitalism, because money dictates a lot of what it is that we value and a lot of what we hold dear, and money allows us to have different classes, and I think that's where we get down to unity and identity. The only unity that we're going to be able to get as humanity is if we all are if we all look at each other as equals, and we don't have that in the current society that we live in. So these are things that people won't want to let go, though. That's going to be the problem. They're so used to it being that way, being equals. A lot of the people that are higher up won't feel that that's fair. They'll feel like they're losing. So why should they go along with this new strategy, or why should they want to get with the rest of humanity and try to make this better? It's good for them in this current society. They're living the life. So they don't really feel the need to want to join the rest of humanity and come together. It's a lot of us that don't have all that would be more than willing to take that step. So, and I think that's pretty crazy when you look at that. So looking at that, unity and identity, we also have curiosity. So a lot of us are dreamers, thinkers. We wonder where we can go. We wonder where the road will take us. A lot of people here that we're all like-minded, and I know a lot of people think the same way. Curiosity. How could we be different? How could the world, are you willing to give up being comfortable in order for the bigger picture, which is to bring everybody together? In America and in a lot of Western countries, we all have houses and homes, and we're protected, and we travel freely without a lot of the risk of things happening, adverse things happening. But then there's a lot of the world that doesn't get to do that. They can't travel freely, that has to worry every time they go out to do something, and it'd be selfish for us in this protected space to not think about the rest of everyone else, so, and I think it's going to be tough, because that's the hurdle that we're going to have to get over. We have to get everybody collectively to agree that doing this, will put us in a position to achieve the things that we are curious about. Because other than that, we just stay in the same cycle that we're in currently, and humanity goes nowhere. We blow ourselves up, nuclear war, or, we just go down the wrong path. It's a tough conversation to have, but these are the conversations that I have when I'm talking to people that I know. These are the type of things that I talk about. This is the reason why I started this show, is because I think that the bigger picture of where humanity goes is the important thing, regardless of what we have to give up to get to that point. It's the big reset for humanity, Throw everything out the window. You know, monopoly money is just as good as monopoly money. If everybody stopped going to work, if everybody said, yeah, I agree, humanity needs to take that change, and everybody just stopped working, or not even stop working, but stop giving value to this dollar, then things would be forced to change at that point. So, you know, right now we have a small movement here with the like-minded group that we have together. And it's just really about getting other people to open their mind up to, you know, the bigger pictures. One day we won't be here any longer. There'll be a brand new, you know, generation of children that are born into this world. So do you want them born into the way things currently are? Or can we get the reset going so at least by a generation or two down the line, we have kids being born into a new way of thinking? You know, sometimes they say you can't teach your old dog new tricks. So we may just have a group of, you know, people who are currently on this earth that just will never change their minds in their views on how, you know, on what they're willing to give up to do that. But it's a deep topic, and I think, hey there, Mr. Hey, Orez Toothbrush, and we love you too, Maggie M10, for sure. We got to do this as humanity. We have to figure this out. So diamonds are cheap and they can be made in the lab. Says my daughter told me that about diamonds. She's 10. Said I didn't know. Imagine destabilization. Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, here's the thing. If you look in humanity's history, we look at all the ancient civilizations, things were built up to a point and then they had to be torn down. And that's no different than the current civilization that we live in. We built it up, but I don't think we've done it the right way. You know, this isn't going to be the way. This isn't a sustainable model for us to carry into the cosmos. So when we're ready to say, okay, we're humanity, we want to join the cosmos, this current model that we're running isn't going to be the one that gets us there. So the conversation that we need to have is, what is the easiest way for us to make that conversion and put ourselves on the right path? Because this model will not sustain outside of this world. And the problem is that the people keeping the secrets, the governments in power, they are the ones that this model benefits the most. And, you know, otherwise we would have something different going on here. So, you know, as long as they want the power and they want the control, then they will do everything that they can to keep this current model going forward. But this current model is not sustainable. And if humanity wants to be here down the road, then we have to make the big change. And yeah, history. Let's see, lead glass into gold. History repeats, apparently, evidently. Think about yellow cake is more valuable than gold. Ask Canford. O'Red says this way is the new slavery. They managed to convince most that slavery no longer exists. They just changed what it looks like on the surface, especially in the penal system. Look at that's why Kanye West wasn't wrong. A lot of people gave him flack when he's talking about the new slaves and the new slavery. Is exactly what it is. It's just we have it better than other countries, so we're not as, it doesn't seem, you know, it doesn't appear to us as a slavery, but it's exactly what it is. And that's why I wondered, that's when we did the show the other day, we did the alien perception of humanity. And I wanted to know, when aliens look at that, if they're able to understand and perceive the model that we have here and they realize that, man, they're just enslaving each other here. And, how do they think about that? What do they think about that? Are they, have their consciousness ascended past that point to where they look down on, I'm sure they look down on our current model. And I'm sure if we had a different model in place, they may be already openly, communicating and contacting us. We may be having open dialogue if we had a different model. But a lot of people say that the Earth is a slave planet because of the ETs. That may not be the case. The Earth may be a slave planet because that's what we've created. And so, that gets deep, and it's a lot of people will say, "Oh, pie in the sky," and it'll never end up being that way. But the thing is that we don't have a choice. It has to change. It has to turn a different way. It has to. So we have to figure out the best way to start that process. And I think the best way is to start having these conversations like we're having today. I think this is the way that we get it started. We have these conversations, then we have them on a larger scale. I think if we had a meeting and we excluded all governments from that meeting and we all just talked as humanity, the rest of humanity, so the 99%, put the 1%, put them aside, I think we would all agree that this is the way that we want to go. I thought about it. I was thinking about it last night. And I was like, if we as humanity look in the past, that some of the recent historic things that we've done, do you really think that if we all collectively as humanity were in charge of where we went, do you think we would ever have created a nuclear weapon? That would have been one of those things that never happened because humanity as a whole doesn't want that. You know what I mean? So, and that's just an example of like decisions that we can make going forward that could help dictate where we go. And in this moment, we just have to get, the people that are afraid of disclosure coming, the people who just don't know what to think. We need to sit down and help each other get through this, or, talk through this pretty much. So this is what we'll be doing here. So there'll be many more shows where we will dive down and try to get deep and lay out the groundwork, because I don't know the answers, obviously. I'm just a human just like you, but I think about this a lot, and I think I have some things that I could bounce off people like you. So that's what we'll do. So looking at this here, Maggie M10, seems to me it's a perspective issue. Can't see the wood for the trees, as it were. Very complex. It is very complex. As you think about this, what we live in is been built up and created over hundreds and hundreds of years. It took time for humanity to build this model that we're in. And it's going to take, it's going to take a huge revelation for us to get out of this and to redirect it. So, but the thing is that we got to start somewhere. We got to start somewhere. And I think this is kind of where we start. Magnetic is network-wide omnipotence. Most of us work ourselves to death for 1%. Same as it always was. And we're going to talk about that on the next show, Reds, because I have something pretty crazy and I'll just say it here right now. So I said to someone, in this current model that we live in, right? So just look at your work. So if you were just a high-minded worker, right, and you just plugged yourself into this machine and lived your life that way, you would normally work from 18 years old and then retire about 65, right? So let's just call it 45 years of work. So average person, just looking at that average salary, and let me get a calculator so I can give some accurate numbers on this here. So we'll just say Let me see. Calculator. I don't have one on here. Let me bring it up on here. Because when you think, when I tell you this and you look at this, it's going to sound so silly. But it's just like what Orez just said here. So, okay. So we're going to go 45 years. And we're going to say, we'll go on the higher end. Okay. We'll just say the average. We'll just say, okay, maybe somehow, some way you were able to average out to about 50,000. And that's on the higher end for just the average person, but we'll just use that. So $50,000 a year, assuming you work every single year for that 45-year time period. So you would earn $2.25 million. So if someone came to you, that 2.25 million, right? That's what it 45 times 50,000. Yeah. So 2.25 million. So if somebody came to you on your 18th birthday and said, "Hey, here's a check for 2.25 million. Now you can take it, but you got to work for me until you're 65." Does that sound like a good deal or no? Does that even sound like a good deal? It does not. Your life should be worth more than $2.25 million. But this is what they want to give you. This is what they want to do. This is the current model, and that's living okay. You know what I mean? Able to pay your rent, and maybe pay a car note and a couple things. So, and that's just on the lower end. 2.25 million for 45 years of your life. Right? That's not a great model. So, and at the end of the day, this paper money loses value anyway. But we'll talk about that on the next show. But it just shows you, when you look at it like that, yeah, things have to change. And we're the most, the U.S. is the number one country, the most powerful country in the world. And the average person, their lives are being bought for $2.25 million. And then when you turn 65, they kick you out, they spit you out, and go get the next 18-year-old to sign them up for 45 years of work. So, yeah, slave planet, like Orez said. Most of ourselves work to death for the same 1%, same as it always was. Magneticus prison planet, just like we just touched. Let's see here. Yeah, that's what I say, Maggie. That's the face that I give when you do the math. When the collector dipped the guy's face in the done, okay. Yeah, no, would never sign my whole life away over for 2.25 million. You are worth more than that. See, in Maggie M10, and that's a generous salary. Yeah, I mean, I really was gonna do math. I mean, come on, let's look at the lower, let's do 45 and really just like 35,000, right? Let's do that. That's more probably in the ballpark. That's $1.57 million, man, for your whole life. And then you don't, and they don't give you anything at the end of that. They give you, they might throw you a party. They might throw you a retirement party, and that's about it. So, let's see. A lot to do for $18K a year. Who wants to be a millionaire in monthly payments? Pretty much. Reds. Every monthly payment. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. It's all down to the math. But it sounds ridiculous, right? When you do it that way. When you present those numbers up front and say, okay, for the rest of your life, 2.25 million, and that's at $50,000 a year. It sounds freaking ridiculous. It sounds insulting, but that's what's happening, right? That's what's happening in this current society that we live in. So I think if you showed that to everyone, if you presented just that one thing there to a lot of people who were probably a little reluctant to change a little bit, or embrace new change, but you presented that, they would be like, damn, no, yeah, okay, things need to change. You're not going to be paid more anytime soon. Cost of living within your lifetime isn't going to make this any different. So, and that number, as you saw, isn't going to change much. And you couldn't come to me at 18 and give me $20 million where I would work for you for 40. And that's, you'll never equate to that on a salary unless you're doing something really special. So with that being said, we got to change this current model. It has to change. We have to, and we'll, like I said, I don't want to spoil what we're going to do on the next show, but that's kind of the direction that we'll be going and talking about intergalactic capitalism, and does capitalism even apply to us in intergalactic space? And would the dollar model, the paper money model that we use now, would that apply there? So that's going to be a deep conversation. But with that being said, I enjoy talking about this type of stuff, man, and I get deep, and that's where I like to go. But with that being said, we have a couple segments still to go. And let me see what we got. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do Once Upon a Time in Ufology. We haven't done that for a while, so we'll do Once Upon a Time in Ufology. And that is going to be Westall 66. So a lot of people are familiar with Westall 66, one of the most famous UFO encounters that we've had in our recent history. And one of the encounters that should have really solidified for everyone, all governments, everyone in the world, that these things are here, based on the amount of people involved in this sighting. So let me go ahead and jump into this one here. So, Once Upon a Time in Ufology, the Westall UFO Encounter. The Westall UFO Encounter is an intriguing incident that unfolded on April 6, 1966 in the suburb of Westall, Melbourne, Australia. The mysterious event involved the sighting of an unidentified flying object by a multitude of witnesses, primarily students and staff from Westall High School and Westall State School. The incident has become a cornerstone in UFO lore due to its high number of credible eyewitnesses' accounts and the subsequent veil of secrecy that enshrouded it. Witnesses reported observing a silver saucer-shaped object maneuvering in the sky. Its descent and rapid ascent defied the capabilities of conventional aircraft. It allegedly landed in a nearby paddock, leaving behind an imprinted circle in the grass. The encounter was witnessed by a significant number of individuals, including teachers and students, lending credibility to the event's occurrence. Several key figures were involved in this encounter. So she had Shane Ryan, a student at Westall High School. Ryan was among the first witnesses to observe the unidentified object. His accounts of the event have been instrumental in reconstructing the timeline and the nature of the encounter. Then you have Terry Peck, another student who witnessed the event. Peck's testimony corroborated the descriptions provided by the witnesses. His recollections have been crucial in establishing the collective experience of the sighting. You had Andrew Greenwood, a science teacher at Westall High School. Greenwood witnessed the UFO from the school grounds. His involvement provided a unique perspective on the event, especially due to his background in science and observation. Then you have Joy Clark, a teacher at Westall State School. Clark was one of the earliest witnesses to report the incident. Her testimony adds depth and the understanding of the site's initial moments. The aftermath of the event was marked by alleged government intervention and secrecy. Witnesses were reportedly questioned by men in suits who discouraged them from discussing the incident. This aspect of the encounter has led to speculation about the involvement of military or intelligence agencies and the presence of a cover-up. And so with that, we're going to jump into our, actually do this real quick because I know Maggie M10 is in Australia. Pretty sure this is one of the incidents that is local to her. How far are you from Westall, Maggie? I should look into why you have Social Security numbers. The government prints $1 million Social Security numbers they issue. Yeah. Don't get me started on that. Social Security numbers to me are tracking numbers, Reds. We're nothing but numbers, and we're going to get into those type of conversations too. Let's see. Okay. Well, yeah, Westall 66, right? 1966 is one of the premier UFO sightings. You had a bunch of kids out there. I want to say Ariel School, I think, had over 60, and then Westall School had over 250. It's either one. You could interchange those. However, a lot of kids, adults that saw these UFOs and saw the crafts landing, and so this sighting right here should be one of the ones that should be like, yeah, that happened, they were here, these things are real. However, we are almost 60 years later, and we're still trying to get these governments to tell us that these things are real. So that's pretty crazy. But with that being said, we do this every show. We do Science Fiction and Science Fact Movie Edition. So go ahead and jump into that. And our movie this time is going to be The Day the Earth Stood Still, the 1951 version. So not the 2008 Keanu Reeves. This is the original film, The Day the Earth Stood Still. So definitely, when we look at these Science Fiction, Science Fact Movie Edition, when we look at these movies, obviously is to look at these movies again through the new lens, now that we have the reality that these things are real and that these sort of situations can actually take place. So when you look at these movies, when you watch these movies through the new lens, it kind of hits a little different, kind of feels a little different. And that's the reason why we look at these, and we do this every show. So let me go ahead and get into here. Maggie is 3 hours by air to Westall, 3 hours by train, but don't buy it with the delays. This trains are the same here. You can get stuck on the track for hours here. So with that being said, that is Science Fiction Science Fact Movie Edition. Definitely go and check out The Day the Earth Stood Still, 1951 version, and let us know what you thought about that. You can put it in the comments. And with that being said, we can go ahead and get out of Science Fiction to Science Fact. And we can go ahead and get home. Once again, we do this for the positive progression of humanity. Always do and always will. Because we have to figure out the best way to move this thing forward. Who else is trying to have this conversation? We need more people out there trying to have this conversation. A lot of people are focused on the here and now. Focused on the government. What is the government going to do? And I think that's a big mistake, right? I think that with the energy, the time, the platform that a lot of these shows have, that we should be talking about what do we do next? Because, okay, disclosure happens, confirmation happens. Who has a plan for after that? Where do we go? You know what I mean? So a lot more of that will be going on here. We will definitely be jumping into trying to figure that out. But once again, the number to call, if you want to leave a message, 856-843-3444 or 856-THE-DIG. Leave a message. Just say hi. You can say hi. Derek Galloway sent me some pictures through the number. you can send some pictures. You have a sighting you want to show, send some pictures. Talk about experience. The line is open all the time, 24/7. And we will hope, I'm trying to get this integrated into where we can do these live call-ins. So whenever anybody's ready to do live call-ins, let me know, because the line is already open and active, and we can get that thing going immediately. So, Social Dig is a place where we all come together. It's not just about me and me talking or me showing you something. It's a place for us to get together and have a conversation. That's why the motto or the logo is "Come join the conversation." And that's definitely what I love the fact that you guys definitely get involved, and that's kind of the way that this conversation will move forward. These topics are meant to be topics that are discussed amongst a group of people, and that's what we're doing here. And I'm so glad you guys came out to do this with me. So with that being said, let me go ahead and bring up the logo here. Let's go ahead and check the messages. Great show. Thanks for great show again. Thank you. Really gets old cogs working. Yeah, I mean that's hopefully what the intent here, and that's what we want to do. Magneticus playing extra time at boarding. You left a message. Okay, we'll be checking that. And if it pertains to the show, we'll play it on the upcoming episode. Nobody skipped the greeting. I know it's a bug. They couldn't get it worked out, Magneticus. But let's thank Magneticus for coming out, Maggie M10 for coming out, O-Red's Toothbrush. And this is going to take a while for me because I got to scroll through here, but I definitely want to thank everybody. So let's go back. I know Bryson's Folly was here, and let's see. PJ, thanks for coming through. Let's see. Tom King, thanks for coming through. Let's see. And Tom, got to get you on the upcoming show, so I'll email you and we'll go from there. Let's see. Brown Dwarf, thanks for coming through. Let's go. All right, Cashew, thanks for coming through. So, yeah, it's been a pleasure. Like I said, we do this for positive progression in humanity. And as long as it resonates with the people. Also, I do want to let you know that that line, the message line, is also open for suggestions. So if there's some topics that you want to talk about, something we may not have covered yet, some things that you might feel are interesting things that we can get into, then definitely leave a message there. Or you can go to the community page on my page and leave some show topic ideas there. I'm willing to have conversation about anything that gets you thinking. You know what I mean? That's I love to work my brain here. I love to work your brain, and I think we got a lot of like-minded people. Yeah, Cashew came through way earlier before the show started, left a message. Yeah, Maggie M10, I'll be looking forward to seeing you on the next episode, and we'll be doing that on Sunday. So, Intergalactic Capitalism, ? Sunday, 5 p.m. Pacific time. I will see you guys there. Once again, my name is Mr. Rob G. All right, O-Red, you take care too. My name is Mr. Rob G. This is a Social Dig. You guys enjoy your Friday, enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you Sunday. You guys take care.